Yo, what up? It's Matt Wayne. Just chilling in the dirty studio, dirty dungeon den. Just, just chilling. This is the first of a series of Reason tutorials. I kind of decided to spread some knowledge out there. There's quite a few elements of Reason. While they're pretty basic, it seems like not a lot of people are touching on them in other tutorials. So I felt like it would be pretty important to share that knowledge with people if I have it. So we're going to give that a shot. Today, I'd like to touch on mainly just project organization and how to optimize your Reason projects so that when you come to the mixing phase of a project, the task of mixing becomes a little bit easier. You know, the only secret to mixing a good song is kind of what you have to work with in the first place. You know, if the production and the performance of a song is good or great, that lays the groundwork for the mixing phase and ultimately makes that job much easier. You know, if everyone's done their job right up to that point, then it's really not that difficult to mix something, at least in my opinion. That's not always the case. You run into problems. But anyway, we'll be exploring songwriting and the production process in a future series. But I think, at least for these first few videos, we're just going to focus on the scope of the mixing process and just how to get into it, you know, how to get started, how to stay organized. You know, in every construction trade, planning is everything. So I think today, to start off with, we're going to make a template project like this one that I have kind of loaded up here. We're going to go ahead and start from scratch though. We'll close this. So first and foremost, we're going to go new from template, and we're probably going to want to pick the empty plus effects template here. It's a good starting point. If you hit F5, it'll bring you into an empty channel mixer window. Um, this is kind of where we're going to start. So first and foremost, we'll scroll right up to the top. We'll get started with the down and dirty. Now this is the master compressor section. If you're not familiar with this and you want to know more about it and what it's actually doing, there are some tutorials for that and some videos that Propeller Heads has released. And I think I've seen one or two others where guys kind of talk about what this is and why you use it. But if if you want to know more about it, hit me up and I can probably do a video specifically on master compression and how that whole process works. But for now, we're just basically just going to turn the compressor on. We're going to set our threshold. I'm probably going to go with a 12.76, you know, something like that. You guys can kind of pick what you want, but I would suggest staying around the 10 to 12, maybe as much as minus 13 dB range. We're looking at a pretty standard 10 millisecond attack. We're going to hit, I would suggest going to the auto release just because then it's doing the job. You don't really have to worry about it. And ratio, I would keep, you know, 2 to 1 ratio. Sometimes I go up to 4 to 1, but typically, you know, I'm not really one to kind of fold the shit out of stuff I'm working on. So, I mean, it's up to you. It depends on your style. You know what kind of style you're doing. If you don't really know what you're doing with this thing yet, then just take these settings. I would also, you know, super important, throw your makeup gain right to the top, max that right out at 15 dB. Shit's gonna be banging. So we're gonna scroll down. You can kind of see your effect sends here. We'll get to those in a second. We're gonna scroll down to our master inserts or our mastering suite. You want to make sure that this is kind of bypassed at this point. It's not really an important part of the production and mixing process. I would just sort of leave it alone. And I'm a really big fan of leaving it bypassed and getting to a certain point with a song and then just kind of turning it on, see what it sounds like, the big reveal, you know, come out of nowhere from the with the left hook or that right uppercut, you know, get it in there. Anyway, leave that bypass for now. So now we're looking at our return section of the mixer. So the send return, super important part of the effects processing of a song, both in the production phase and the mastering phase. as well as predominantly the mixing phase, in my opinion. Typically for sound design, this is where you're going to want to have all of your elements that are global. Their scope is global. So if it's something that you're using on everything rather than having one device in Reason, so say a reverb. So for example, if we were to just hit edit here on this or hit F6 to bring us up into our rack view, we've got 3 reverbs here. So if we were going to have, say, a 12-track song, and out of those 12 tracks we wanted 10 tracks with reverb, that would potentially be 10 reverbs. Here we only have 3. So what's, it's kind of a no-brainer as what's more efficient for the project. I would say as a rule, typically you're only going to need 2 of these. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this third one. And I'm going to delete this echo for now. We're going to get back to delay and echo. You could probably do the same with your project. I would keep these first 2. The first one being your plate. So it's a certain type of reverb, which we'll get into in a future series. Why you use plate, why you use room, what you use reverb for. Most people, as far as I can tell, don't use a lot of reverb. I love reverb. I find it's really useful to add character or to change the character of a song element, of an instrument, sorry. Anyway, we could talk about that shit for hours. We want these 2. They're going to be used as our plate and as our room reverbs. That's all you need to know. We can get to that down the road. So one thing I would also suggest, and it's super important that you do it this way. So we're going to go ahead and create a send effect here. And we're going to bring in, let's see, we're going to bring in a compressor. The Softube FET is probably my favorite compressor. We can use the init patch. So I'm gonna scale it down to about minus 3.9. Let's say 4, and give myself a ratio of 4:1. So we've got a 4:1 ratio, minus 3.9 on the input. We're going to keep the fairly slow attack somewhat halfway. So it's really only going to pull, the mid to end part of the song element. So we're going to turn up external sidechain all the way. I don't usually worry about my low cuts too much. I'll pull a little bit off. I'm going to go to 30 hertz today, and this one I'm just going to nest it at about 9.9. Just a little. And we're going to max our look ahead, and we're going to max the parallel inject dry. So basically this is going to be another master compressor or just a light parallel compression that I'll use as a glue to sort of mesh my elements together, the different instruments and signals in my song. I would suggest doing at least one of these. They're very useful for changing your sound. A lot of people are always asking me, how do you get your Reason beats sound like they're not Reason beats? How do you get your shit popping? Basically, this is my sort of Swiss Army knife, super glue, secret weapon for that sort of shit. So, secret's out, spoiler alert. Try it. It might not work for you. You might not like it. For me, I get the sound that I'm looking for out of that with a lot of things, and it seems to work on everything. It does have a tendency to pump, push sounds to the front and kind of just shove everything out of the way while it's there. For some songs that works. And if you're doing more than 1 or 2 of them, you can use them on different elements because they're basically working as a bus where the sends of all of your channels are sent to that individual device. You can control that output. You can control that compression or that limit. Usually I'll use it just to reinforce the sound because you're able to preserve the dynamics and the peaks of the original audio rather than using a compression on an insert effect. you're able to sort of sculpt the sound a little more, give it that full flavor and feel without degrading or diminishing the original content. It's a nice little trick. I like it. I'm also going to add a delay. So I'm going to pull in the Native Instruments replica. That's what I've been using a lot of lately. I really like it. This is kind of what it looks like here. I'm not going to get too much into the settings because they're sort of context specific. I mean, sometimes you're going to go, instead of a 1/8 setting, you're going to go down, sorry, we're going to go up to 1/4, you know, and dotted, straight, millisecond, triplets. There's a lot of options, right? We got these different delay modes that change our settings here. You can kind of see what's going on there. If you don't have this VST, if you don't have Native Instruments Complete or Kontakt, hook yourself up, man. It'll be a huge investment for sure. I think it's about $600 or $700, but it's worth it in the long run. That's pretty much it for the send return for now. Like I say, we've got 8 sends. There's 4 more left. I've got a lot of room to kind of play with there. If I wanted to do a drum bus or a vocal bus, that's where I would do it. I would use the send return. It's all sort of context specific. If we want to move forward, we'll hit F5 again to get back into our full mixer view. I'm going to load in an audio track. So then this audio track, we're going to scroll all the way up to the top. Super important to start with in terms of leveling our signal chain. If you're using a lot of effects, you're going to be boosting the signal as it reaches this portion of the signal chain. So we want to turn the input gain down to sort of compensate for that. I usually go with a -11, sort of the 9 o'clock range on the pot. Shit or get off the pot, you know, that sort of thing. Anyway, we got dynamics here. I'm going to turn this comp on. And the standard settings are usually pretty sufficient for most sounds. If you don't really know what to do there, again, I can cover that in another tutorial if someone's interested. But this pretty standard settings are good for most sounds. This gate control here, an expander, I use a lot with guitars or any audio signal that's got a fair amount of impedance or background noise or hum or fuzz. It's a good way to pull it off. You would just kind of turn your gate on, adjust your threshold accordingly until you've got just that sound that you want to eliminate out of the latent recording. I like to do it here. Some amps have a noise gate, which we will get into just in momentarily here, but this is a good place to do it. I prefer to do it there. I mean, you can turn your channel strip on, your EQ, low and high pass filters, I really wouldn't worry about until you're getting into specifics. But you could just go ahead and turn your EQ on. So once you pull your graphic EQ up, you can already see some stuff and kind of work and control with it. That's more just a workflow thing, you know. It's all ready to go. You're in the heat of the moment. You pop it on, it's there. It's perfect. So scrolling down, that's pretty much what I would do. I mean, you could preset these if you knew what was going on here and then just kind of pull your reverbs back. We're definitely going to put some of this on there, turn the send up a little bit, something, you know, something like that. Should get you in the right starting point. If this were, let's say, an instrument, so we're just going to go ahead and I'll load up a Thor. So like, say this is, for the sake of argument, actually going to be a poly. Ugly thing. So if we're going to do a lead synth, more than likely we're looking at the stereo pan. From a mixing perspective, mind you, we're probably going to throw it close to the center. So you could go ahead and throw the width all the way down, or we could leave it halfway widened out. If you're not really sure what effect that's going to have, try it. You know, you'll experiment with it. I would either keep it wide or I would keep it mono. If you're doing like a bass line, or say we're bringing in an electric bass on this track, this will be our bass here. Super important to label your stuff so you know what it is you're making. Guitar. Yeah, we'll leave it. Fuck it. Poly. Synth. Learn how to spell. So here we go. We got guitar, bass, polysynth. So if I were to load this template up from this point on, then we would quickly see, oh sweet, I got a guitar line, I got a bass input, I got a synth, maybe I got a drum set in here. Let's pull one of those in too and kind of get this thing popping, you know. What do we want? We want a Kong drum designer. Yeah, let's rock it. Kong kit, perfect. So there we go. So anyway, back to this. We know that we're probably going to put this compressor on all of them, so we'll turn all our sends on, right? Kind of turn this stuff up a little bit. The bass and the drums probably don't need as much of this compression because they're going to push it out of the way. We're going to let these lead elements probably take the forefront of that. And again, that's just going into our FET here. And it's good at this point, if you're building a song, to just kind of throw things over, spread your stuff out. Reason will let you go infinitely left and right. I don't think actually it lets you go left, but oh, it does let you go left. Holy shit, mine equals blown. Wow. Good job, Reason. Y'all brought it. Okay, anyway, enough of that. We got all these kind of spread out now. So I've actually got my Kong kit on the opposite side, so we'll just throw it over here. There we go, nobody knows. So we were to look at this from behind with all of our cables. You know, everything is in an organized fashion. If I'm scrolling along the side, I see my guitar, my bass, my polysynth, and my Kong kit. Boom, it's all there, and it's all here, you know, like that. Just a good workflow habit to get into. You know, we got these like this. Open them all up. So guitar, we're going to start with guitar. Hopefully you're following along. I know I kind of jumped a bit there. So Kuasa, we're going to go with, no, you know what, you guys probably don't have that shit. So we're going to go to the standard soft tube guitar amp. There we go. So we're probably going to dial some settings in on this. I'm really not a British drive kind of guy. I'm more of an American clean. Number 5. Let's go with American clean number 5. So I'm not big on bass on my guitars in the mid. You know, we'll keep this a glaringly bright guitar. I'm not even going to listen. You know, I got no guitar hooked up right now, but it doesn't matter. We know that this is all probably going to change, but we're going to set it up so that homie gets in, he goes straight to the guitar, plugs are in there, and he's got a sound. That's what we want. So that's good. I mean, we kind of have the basic element. We know this is a guitar. We've got an amp modeler here. Our settings look pretty good for the most part. We can maybe set that gate now. Just drop it all the way down. Let's see where that goes. That would be one of the first things I'd do. You get them in there, you're doing your leveling, you're doing your tuning, and then you're popping over. Your guitarist is hot, he's ready to lay down a tasty lick. You're pretty much ready to go. You know, it's there. It's very intuitive that way. I like to do it that way. We work kind of at a breakneck pace in my studio with the homies. So we're gonna go to the bass here. Let's throw in that tasty soft tube bass amp. I got it right here. But we go Reason devices up into here. You can see how much I use it. It's chilling. So we got the soft tube bass. We would set this up. You know, I'm probably going to dial this drive back. I I like a lot of bass, throwing that ultra low, usually on a mid frequency 4 setting. If you're not sure what this stuff does, play with it, play around, do what you want, experiment. I'm just kind of giving you a starting point if you're not familiar with this. Usually my middle, I'll pull back, 3.5 to 3.7, and then I usually pull. We've been using a Fender Rumble 150 for a bass head going into the audio interface lately, and it's got a 4-band EQ, and I usually just run like no high mid, and then everything else fairly flat. I like a lot of that low end punch, but I don't like that muddiness of the mid moving up into your 3K range and higher. But I still like to have a little bit of that character, so you can kind of feel the pop and the note working. So I'll leave my highs. So I mean, this is pretty much how I rock it. I might turn this up a bit. We can throw some other stuff on here. One thing I know that I'm going to throw on all of this, I forgot on the guitar. I'm probably going to go with the tube, because tube's on everything, bro. And then you can just turn it down. We can even turn the EQ off, maybe play around with this a little bit. I know what I like. I'm not going to get into why. If you don't use Scream, you're missing out, man. There's so many options with Scream. And this I consider, we'll do it on the guitar here too, I consider it to be what's called a sort of a clean boost or clean overdrive. Transparent overdrive is another word that I've heard used for it. And I really like the sound and character of tubes. I have a couple of tube preamps that I use for my mics and bass occasionally. They add a certain je ne sais quoi to the sound, and Scream does a really good job of emulating that with their tube. And I'll use overdrive. I'll use fuzz on bass. Digital, Scream, I use those quite a bit. If I'm trying to get a really crazy sound out of a guitar, if I want to make a guitar sound like a synth, I'll probably use digital or Scream to a certain extent, especially digital, because I find it just really chunks up guitar in a way that is not natural, I guess is the right descriptor. I'm not sure. So anyway, we're going to keep moving here. I'm fucking yakking. So we got the polysynth. Polysynth, you know what? For the sake of argument, I'm going to go ahead and throw this Scream in here too. Baby's going to like this, I'll just leave this one the way it is. The rest work from there. So all of this kind of lends to the idea of reinforcing the sound, sprinkling some money on it, as I like to say. With the Kong, now this is kind of something we could get into. I'm not too sure how we're doing for time, but let's dive right into this. So the Kong is set up, if you notice that it's only set up on a stereo input. So all of these pads are all on one channel, which is okay for the creative process. But from a mixing engineer's standpoint, this is a really inadequate way to mix your drums. And I would say that you probably don't want to do it this way if you're going to mix a song. So what you could do in your template, which I'll do today, we'll just quickly try and throw it in there. So we've got this one mix channel. So we would create another mix channel, which is specifically just a channel in the mixer that is not connected to anything. So we've got the input here. We're going to take 3 and 4. We're going to throw another one in here. What I should have done is this. Here, we'll back up. Hold up a second there, bud. So we got one here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this a couple of times. So I mean, if you're only doing a couple pads, you don't have to do the whole shebang, all 16. And you can group things too, is another thing, which I'll get into. So I've got 5 here. I'm going to do 2 more. We're going to go with basically 8 channels. So we got 4, 8, and we're just going to rig this up so that we've got stereo on all of these, and you could do mono on all of these if you wanted, and that's kind of a fun way to pull it. We're just going to route all of these additional outputs of the Kong to these mix channels. So now, shit ton of cables, glad it's not real, what a rat's nest, right? Anyway, there we go. So now our Kong is somewhat set up for a multi-channel mixing view. So now we have all these individual channels. But it's not done yet, because if you'll notice, if you go to all of these sounds and the pads, sorry, if you go to all these pads, you'll see the drum output setting here. It says master effects. So what we actually need to do is set their outputs. So this kick I'm going to throw to the main output, left and right. But this snare I'm going to throw to 3 and 4. So you'll notice here, snare is now hitting on the 3 and 4. And if we scroll up a little bit, see how the kick is hitting on Kong Kit. So we can start to relabel this a little bit to get our workflow making more sense. So we could go kick, because that's our kick. As you can see, kick popping. We got a kick, really ugly kick, no big deal. We're going to change that down the road. So this is our snare. Right? So we got some hi-hats coming up here. We're going to put them on 5 and 6. And now I'm not too picky with my hi-hat situations. You know, I'm just going to go ahead and call this perks, because in a studio, analog studio situation, or a live drum recording situation, you're probably going to do your cymbals together, you know. It's just kind of a given. You're going to group things, long story short. So like we got a closed and open here, which are both going to be routed automatically, because this pad is actually a clone of the third pad. But we could go, say, we got a crash here. Woo! Super loud crash. Let's turn that down. And then throw that into 5 and 6. So now if we look, you can see it's hitting in our perks, and so is our hi-hat. But you also kind of notice it's still popping in here for some reason, right? What's up with that, eh? We'll get to that. So we got another kick, big booming 808, ugly 808. We're going to throw that into the main output. And then we're going to take, what else we got here? An ugly snare. So we're just going to keep routing this. I got to get faster. I'm going to bash this out here real quick. We got a clap. You know what? Clap's a snare. We're doing it. Hi-hat. We got a new hi-hat. Psych. It's already routed because it's the same as this 3. Just making sure you're watching, guys. Anyways, so we're going to the toms. Now these toms could all go on the same channel. So we're going to throw them all on 7 and 8. Because that's the way I likes it. We can rename it here. Toms. Done. Toms. 9 and 10. What's going to go on 9 and 10? We got the cabasa. That's kind of a perk sound, you know. These two are perks. And that is a, you know, those are our cymbals. So we could throw all of these instead to our 5 and 6. Because we're lazy, we're cutting corners. Maybe we want to free up some of these. And this is a synth tom. Guess what, buddy? You're with the other toms. That's just how we're rolling today. That's the gig. So now if we look, hopefully, you see it's not popping yet. Now homie can't remember why. Kind of stalling. They're all still triggering for the most part on the kick. So we can actually, You know what? Let's pull this over here. Let's call this our kick. We'll call this our Kong. And I'm going to look into this for the next tutorial because I did do it once. I've done it before, and I can't remember exactly how to do it. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm not an expert, I guess. Sucks to be me. So we've got this extra kick, and it is routed to, I believe, 9 and 10. So we're going to go 9 and 10 with this kick ensemble we've got here. So now all of these, there we go, are on their own respective channels. And you know, these ones are kind of unnecessary, I guess, if we got all these grouped. Oh, what did you do, bro? What did you do? Undo. That's what he did. All right, enough joking around here. So let's just unhook this. There we go. So that's pretty much it, man. I mean, I feel like I've got a template here. I can make a song with this. I could just pop this up. There's everything I need. I've got a bass. I've got a guitar. I've got my drums routed. I've got a polysynth. I'm going to get back to you on how to use the main output instead. That was kind of tripping me up there. But this is pretty much the preset that we're looking for. As you can see, a lot of things are already done for the mixing process. And again, we could throw this compression on all these new tracks. I know that my kick is probably not going to get a whole lot of reverb, but my snare, I'm probably going to get my snare popping a little with some reverb. And my perks and my oxys, going to have some reverb on them. Toms, I'm probably going to run them dry for a little while before I really feel out where they sit in the mix. So I mean, that's not too essential unless you were working with a kit that's kind of all built the same. So like say you wanted to have that room or that plate reverb on everything, you could just kind of turn it on and turn it down. So then the entire kit has some of that on it. And you know, my kick, hip hop, I'm going to drive it right down the front. So my kick is probably going to be mono. Same with this bass. Bass is going to be mono for sure, right? All those little things. Setting things up. You do it now. You do it once. You save yourself 1,000, maybe 1,000,000 times. Do it now. It's saved, right? So then we're going to go save as, obviously. So you can see here I've got 16 track template. I'll pull this over here. You're probably looking at my head. I've got the 16 track template. And I've got the main template. Those are two that I've made earlier. I've got, you know, guitar presets, bass presets. Those are all kind of templates. There's something else I can get into at another time. But we're going to call this one some kind of template. There, perfect. All right. So we save that. So now we have this file, but the problem is if you were to load this file all the time and start making changes to it, you'd either have to save as to make a new file, or you would just save over this. So we don't actually want to do that. So what we want to do is we want to go to our edit preferences. And if you go to the general tab, and you'll notice here it says default song, and you can set it up to be empty. You can set it up to a regular template. Or you can open this up, and then it brings you to this transport menu. It'd be kind of hard to see with my head in the way, but I'll move it over a bit here. So you have this transport menu in the browser, and we would sort of navigate that and pick our template. So it would be some kind of template, but I'm going to stay with my main template because that's what I'm rocking. So then if we were to close this, load Reason back up. All right, we're back in my template that I use. So you can see I kind of got some things set up already. It's a little different. Here, we'll turn that on too. But yeah, you know, it's pretty much the same As far as our master compressor, turning on our dynamics, the 9 o'clocks on our gains. If y'all don't know what time it is, so we could, I could turn these on. I didn't on some of them. We got a drum kit which I have yet to track out because I just bought this. I would actually, if you're looking at doing some funky live soul drumming, you want it to sound like a loop, but you want to be able to play it, this is probably the best device available for Reason. Loving it. Great job, guys. Killed it. I'm going to be doing a review on it in the future because it's just an amazing, amazing drum machine. Really happy with it. You can kind of see what else I got going on. I'm going to hide that stuff. I'm not going to show you my secrets, all my secrets. But yeah, you can see what's going on here. We've got the song laid out to the side. I've got my mastering suite is currently on because, spoiler alert, I actually firmly believe in mixing a project with the mastering suite on. So a lot of people disagree with that, but it's not for everyone. I mean, for me, if I can't hear what the sound is going to sound like finished, I can't really, I have a hard time envisioning that. And sometimes, like I said earlier, I'll leave it off, work the song, and then the big reveal, I'll pop it on. But what I actually do is I've got a machine that I use, which is this TubeTech opto compressor from Softube. Amazing device. We'll also be doing a review on this because, oh shit, goddamn, it's changed my sound so much. It's just incredible. Absolutely incredible device. But you can see it's bypassed right now. And then I've got one above it that's also bypassed. And I'll turn this on. Some people experience latency issues when their mastering suite is running. And I had some pretty process heavy ones in there for a while. And I found like if I had the mastering suite on while I was trying to record a guitar line, I'm getting it from halfway across space several light years later. There's a huge delay. It was annoying. So I had to turn those off while I work on the track. That's pretty much it, man. This is my template. This is my first tutorial video. If you want anything covered that I didn't cover, hit me up. If you think I suck, hit me up. Any suggestions on how to improve, things I can work on. I hope the sound wasn't too bad. I hope I wasn't too boring. Kind of long-winded. But that's the video. Thanks again, guys.